Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I have the one and only Steve Trang with me today. We're going to be talking about how to fix your sales pipeline, because I know Steve will corroborate with me here, is that's one of the biggest problems that a lot of entrepreneurs have is there's all sorts of holes in your boat or your sales pipeline. We're going to fix those today. Right, Steve?
We're going to fix something. We're going to fix parts of it. It's going to be better. It'll be better.
Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs they just assume that, they're good. Actually, a lot of people that you and I know are really good at sales themselves, but then they have to manage a team to do it. So things start to fall apart, right? And there's also just not the right KPIs or checks and balances in place throughout the pipeline where there's all sorts of leaks and they don't even know they exist.
Yeah. Well, Jason Lewis, a dear friend, I love this quote. If I could just close the gap between what I believe to be true and what it actually is, I'll have more money that I don't know what to do with, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I think we all struggle with that.
Yeah. Well, in the extremely rare instance, Steve, that somebody's listening to this right now and they don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your kind of background and how you got here?
Yeah, sure. So Steve Trang, Disruptors. I'm a nationally known sales trainer. I've done anything and everything as far as it comes to real estate. I've got massive shiny object syndrome, but we're on the mend. We've kind of cured it. So today I'm only focusing on two things. One is helping teams maximize sales performance. And number two, running our podcast Disruptors, which is on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify.
Awesome. So let's talk about improving the sales process, because a lot of people that, I guess one of the things that I just said is a lot of people are like, I kind of say, if I were to ever buy a McDonald's franchise, like nobody would be able to get those fries as golden brown as me. But I'm the owner. I can't be the French fry guy. So I think that happens in sales for a lot of entrepreneurs as well, is they are a great individual contributor, but when you start to have a team and you start to grow your business, you can't do all those things. So let's kind of dive into sales process and where a lot of folks should start if they're not the sole salesperson on their team.
Yeah, well, I think I'll take a slightly different angle. I think the biggest challenge we have is that as entrepreneurs and business owners, we are driven to hunt. We can withstand almost like maximum damage in a video game, right? But we'll keep going, right? And then we bring salespeople into our organization. We expect them to be just like us. So we expect them to close as well as us. We expect them to work as hard as us. We expect them to be willing to work on weekends, to, follow up, and all of these things. And I think that one of the things we have to realize is that the people we hire are not us, because if they were us, they wouldn't need us. And so for me, what I'm seeing a lot is, the distance or the gap between like the top performers, people you're interviewing for this show, and most everyone else is really just the caliber of their sales team. And when I say caliber of their sales team, I'm not saying these people are, wet noodles, they can't close. It's not that. It's that, are you getting the most out of every individual? Are you getting the right people in the door? And then the people that you're getting in the door, are you setting them up for success? Right? So I think there's a lot involved. And so, again, a lot of us, we don't need a lot of instruction, right? No one had to show us how to use DocuSign. No one had to show us what a contract looks like. We found a contract through, Facebook or Instagram, or we Googled it, whatever, but we found some contract and we added our own flair to it. And then we got DocuSign and we figured out how to do initials and signatures, right? And then we got Podio or some other CRM. I'm not saying that's the gold standard. It's just at some point we all were playing with it or considering it.
Right.
And we figured it out, right? And we just expect our salespeople to do the same exact thing when that's such an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the big things as a business owner is if you're going to bring in a salesperson, you have to assume they don't have the same resourcefulness as you. They don't have the same ability to solve problems. They don't have the same mental stamina to just deal with failure and adversity and overcome it, right? And so like for one of the things we're talking about is in our onboarding process, we were showing them how to use DocuSign. And it sounds absurd, right? But think about it. How often we said, all right, go talk to some owners, go get some contracts signed. And then they're right there trying to figure out how to get a contract signed. And they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So I think that's one of the first things. And the other thing too is, are you bringing in the right people? I'm a very, very big fan of assessing the talent before they walk in the door. And I still see to this day, people bringing in people with our good culture fits, core value fits, which absolutely is important. But that's just one piece of the process. I'm a very big believer in, using predictive index. We started using Working Genius. We're screening people. We're doing 90-minute interviews. We're doing reference checks. All things that I knew I was supposed to do like 10 years ago that I didn't do. And now that we have a process for doing it and we're actually committed to following a process, our team looks way better than it has been in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've used this analogy before as entrepreneurs, when it comes to hiring, it's like going to the grocery store when you're hungry. You end up with a bunch of crap in your cart that you shouldn't be eating, but you're just like, I'm hungry. I need those Funyuns right now,
I need it right now.
We're often like hiring somebody when we're behind the 8 ball. Like we should have hired them 2 weeks ago, but now we've got to go. And you start making sacrifices for start making excuses for why you're not going to follow a proven process. You're just like, it'll work. I'll take them.
Yeah.
Right.
Like how many flippers have you talked to, Mike, who is like, I know that property didn't fit my buy box, but I thought I can make it work. And they lost their butts. How many times has this happened? Right.
Yep.
We do the same thing with hiring. We're like, hey, this guy doesn't quite fit, but we'll make an exception for him because we really need somebody in this seat right now.
Yeah.
And then what happens? 2 months of frustration and you fire the guy.
Yeah.
Like, how much time did you waste? How much money did you lose? How much opportunity costs went right out the window?
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't want to follow a process.
Yep. So maybe talk about that for a moment. What is a good process to follow for hiring the right people? You talked about using PI to analyze people. We do the same thing. What is a good process? Because a lot of people have a sales background, right? But not all sales are equal. And how do you decipher one person from the next? Like if they're going to be a good fit for your team?
So the first thing is we want to see some sort of relevant experience, right? Then after that, we want to screen them. So what our process as it stands today, so we use our CRM, and if you want to work with us, we actually send you to a landing page we created within our CRM. And once you actually fill out that page, it begins the automation where I'm going to send you a thank you for your interest. By the way, here's this predictive index link. If you wouldn't mind clicking on it, taking the test, right? Now, there's no automation today as it stands at predictive index. So we just send them text notifications like, hey, we sent you a test. And then a couple of follows like, hey, please reply PI completed when you're done, because that's the only way we can have this figured out.
Right.
And once it's completed, now a sales manager, which was myself for a little bit, will go in there and actually review the PI. And then we'll start looking at their background. But I'm not looking at your background until you fill out the PI.
Right.
There's so many people that will come through that aren't quite a good fit, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. And then after that, we do a screening. Let them know what it's like to work here. Let them know that it's not sunshines and rainbows. And a lot of times it's going to suck. Knowing that, are you sure you want this job? And if they say yes, then at that point, we'll actually have a full-blown 90-minute interview, if it's a good candidate. And after that 90-minute interview, we're now doing the reference checks, making sure everything they're saying, everything they said is true. And then from there, if that all works, now we have an onboarding process. And the onboarding process sets the pace, sets the tone, making sure that the first 90 days, they're set up for success. Versus what I used to do, which is like, all right, Mike, here's the login for the trainings. Here is the documents. Here's your logins. Go get it, right? I think what's a poorly kept secret that no one really talks about so much, but we all know what kind of happens, is like I'm convinced that every wholesaler out there has some John Martinez login, and then they all just give them the login for their new guy, right? It's like, all right, here's the login. Go watch these videos and get out there. And then, by the way, here are either old leads that have declared themselves dead, or even worse, here's some new leads. Go work these new leads, and, good luck.
Yeah. I have a couple questions for you. So when we're talking about recruiting, are you typically looking for people that have, I mean, this is one of the things that I typically look for is other high ticket sales experience, consultative sales experience. So it could be cars, it could be siding, it could be selling windows door to door. It could be a lot of those things, but I know that that's a limiting belief I put on it. But what are you looking for in terms of kind of proven background?
So if they've been in sales, I want to see what they've sold, right? I mean, like almost anything in sales, as long as they're selling, it's fine. Like it's not like cashiers for Gap, like that's not a sales experience.
Right.
But if they've been in sales for like at least a year or two, there's something there, right? Because what's really more important is character and ability to learn than the actual sales experience. I just want to know that you've got some experience, you know kind of what this looks like. To start off with, right? Someone more senior, I want to see that you've had success. You actually sold and were able to generate 100K in actual commissions earned, right? Because that's going to be a big indicator to see where you're going to go. It deals with the financial thermostat. On the flip side, things I'll look for, if someone doesn't have experience and I'm looking to bring someone in, if they played collegiate sports, D1, D2 athlete, love those people, right?
Yeah.
Former military, great, how to follow a process.
Yep.
It's been beaten into you.
Yeah.
And third, one thing I'd like to, if they don't have sales experience, is debt collection. Because you know how to pick up a phone and talk to someone who's at a low point and get them to want to work with you.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
if they don't have relevant sales experience, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And you said something about setting people up for success for 90 days. So without going through your whole process, what are some things that maybe you didn't used to do, but you realize those are the gaps that maybe a lot of investors are not doing? So what are some things you can do to set people up for success for the first 90 days?
So we have modules now, right? So again, we use our own CRM, but like once they we've been, moved into status of like, one, just like you would with a house homeowner, right? This is a recruit, right? Now it's set to one. Now the onboarding process begins, and now they're going to start getting access to all our modules. And so the first 30 days, I want you to watch these modules. I want you to pass the test. Second 90 days, here are the modules I want you to consume. I want you to pass the test. All along the way, some manager is talking to them, seeing how they're doing, and making sure they're doing the activities. Because they're going to have to pick up the phone and start talking to people, right? In the first 30 days, you need to pick up the phone and talk to people. I'm not expecting a whole ton of sales. What I am expecting in the first 7 days to know that you're willing to pick up the phone and call people. One of the greatest challenges we've seen over and over again, way too often, is people that are okay even talking in an interview for a phone call, but when it comes time to actually bang the phones, they can't do it. So I want to see that you're banging the phones in the first 7 days. By the end of the first week, you're on the phones, talking to dead leads, actually having conversations, because if you can't pick up the phone, there's nothing else I can do for you.
Yeah. And I know, Steve, in the past, just from some of our conversations, some of the training you've done for us before, for on the investor machine side, for example, is I know we talked about like you historically like to see people that can generate some of their own leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously there's been a lot of changes with texting and cold calling over since we created that even. How much of an importance is that, like to get people to create their own leads versus you providing leads to them?
Today is not as critically important. There was a time where it was really, really important. At this exact moment, it's not as critical to me. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, it was really easy to do deals. Really easy to do deals. Today, would it be nice for them to go earn their own commissions? Sure, right? But that's not as critical to me as much as they're a good culture fit. They've got the right attitude. They got the right PI. They got the right working genius. Like I said, I mentioned that earlier. We're looking for all these things overall as a package. And then, I say core values, but built into the core values is the right attitude, right? Are you coachable? Are you hungry? Do you want this? Because if you don't want it, again, if you don't have purpose, if there's not a fire in your belly, I can't lead you, right? I can't lead someone that's like weak in the knees. I want killers in our organization.
Right. Yeah. So how do you get, I think a lot of times we'll hire salespeople and we don't necessarily get the most out of them. Like, how do you make sure you get the most out of them? Sometimes it could be in their mind, they have a compensation level they want to hit. Sometimes you have an expectation as an owner of what they're capable of, but sometimes your expectation is off as well. So how do you make sure you get the most out of every salesperson you hire?
It's a fantastic question. I think one of the things that every salesperson I've ever interviewed, like how much you want to make, the lowest they ever say is, I want to make at least 6 figures. I want to at least make 100,000, right? So they all have this idea, I want to make 6 figures, I want to make 100,000, whatever. And that's fine. I said the same exact thing when I started in 2007, right? I think the big thing here is not how much you want to make, is what's important about making that kind of money. Why do you want to make that money? Because once you figure out like, oh, I want to make 100,000 because of X. So for example, I might ask, hey, Mike, I appreciate your interest in working here. I'm curious, like, what is it about working here that's, interesting to you? He's like, well, I want to make 6 figures. Okay. But, putting money aside, what are some goals that are important to you? And you say, well, my wife, she works really hard and we got 2 kids. It's important to me that she can actually take care of the kids and, be a stay-at-home mom and wife and so on. It's like, okay, how much do you think you need to make in order to be able to do that? And you say, well, in order for me to replace her job and for her to stay home, she's making $45,000 a year right now, and, to take care of everything else, I got to be making at least 120, 130 a year. Okay, great. So 120,000 a year, 10,000 a month. Perfect. Okay. For us here to be making 10,000 a month, we need to close 100,000 a month in sales. Like, okay. All right. So in order to do 100,000 a month in sales, that's basically 6 or 7 contracts per month. So, okay. In order to do 6 or 7 contracts per month at a 20% close rate, you need to sit 24 appointments per week, right? Or per month, right? Which is, 6 appointments per week. Are you good with that? Like, yeah, I guess it's 6 appointments a week. Okay, in order to get 6 appointments per week, here's how many conversations you need to have every single day to make sure you're getting those appointments. We're talking 90 minutes to 2.5 hours a day on the phone. Are you good with that? You say, okay, so in order for you to retire your wife so you can make 120K a year so that you can do 100K a month so that you can do 6 or 7 closed contracts per month so that you can sit this many appointments per week and so on, this kind of talk time. No one's going to take all of that. Are you good with that? Say yes. Now you decided, here's how hard you're going to work. I'm not saying, Mike, you need to work weekends. Mike, you need to hit the phones for 2 hours a day. Because when I say that, you're like, screw off. I'll go do this myself. I'll go watch YouTube videos and buy the courses and I'll go compete against you. Screw you, right? Versus like, hey, Mike, you said it was important to you to be able to retire your spouse. And you were willing to put in this kind of work. So last week, when I was looking, in our CRM, I noticed that you put in 45 minutes of talk time last week. But yeah, so okay, so have your goals changed? But now this is all about Mike. Right. It's not about Steve.
Yep. And a lot of times I've seen, really anybody that's in more of an employee mindset or a salesperson doesn't necessarily put together the upstream activities to the downstream profit, right? So now if you're saying you have to be on the phone this many times a day or this amount of time a day, you have to make this many offers a day or a week. If you're not doing that, you can kind of back into like, well, you didn't do the activities to get to that point, right?
Right. Yeah. But the big thing is like you and I were willing, you were selling a bunch of franchises, right? I was showing a bunch of houses, running a bunch of listing appointments back in the day. No one said, Steve, you need to work on Sunday afternoons or early Saturday mornings, right? Like my first daughter, when she was born in 2011, I literally showed a house the next day because I had a showing appointment I scheduled before my wife gave birth. I was like, well, I scheduled the showing. I dealt with a listing agent. It's an REO property. We can't not show it because I don't know when I'm going to be able to show this property again. I showed the property. No one had to say, Steve, you need to be willing to go show houses the day after your firstborn is born.
Yeah.
We just have it wired within us.
Right.
But the people that we bring onto us aren't us. So we need to have them see that this activity is because their goals, not because of our goals. If we're asking them to do something for our goals, maybe. If it's important, if I've got some time, if we're asking someone to do something for their goals, when did their goals become priority number 2?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So what are people doing? There's obviously, we all know people that are operating at a much higher level, performing at a much higher level than others, right? And in terms of managing salespeople. So what are the top guys in real estate doing right now that are crushing it? And in the last couple of years, it's been a difficult time, but we all know people that have absolutely been crushing it.
Murdering
despite
it right
that,
now.
right? I remember when I was coming up, to say a blast from the past, in the Dallas market here was Jamie Woolley. So she's kind of MIA right now, but it's like there was a time where all these people were struggling, and Jamie was an example of somebody who was coming up and just like crushing it out of nowhere. And it's just like, and it's the same thing. When I started in 08, everybody was running away. We did 65 flips in our first year with like everybody else was running away. And we just had a different mindset, largely because we were naive and we didn't know better. But there are people that are crushing it right now, that have teams that are crushing it right now compared to others that aren't in the same market even, by the way. Like
on the same
what differentiates those two people?
Yeah, I'll go back to the same thing, is the people, right? If you look at like historically, Southwest Airlines, I don't know if you guys know this, right? If you read, from Good to Great, Southwest Airlines did not come up with their business model. They stole it from another company, right? And that company is no longer in business. And other people came in to try to steal Southwest Airlines' business model, and it doesn't work. And the reason why is the people, right? The people, the culture. So we got to make sure that the right people are coming in the door and that we keep them, and then we don't let them leave, right? We do everything we can to inspire them, motivate them, that they want to work with us, that we can help them fulfill their purpose. So the biggest difference I'm seeing between the top teams and most other teams is the caliber of their salespeople and the performance of the salespeople. Are you getting consistent performance? And the only way to get consistent performance, having the right people come in, right? Help them find their goals, train them up. So I've got a lot of the top teams working with me to train their sales teams so that, they every day they're out on the battlefield, they're on the phones talking to the homeowners, they're equipped. They know how to have a conversation with a homeowner. If you're not investing in your team and you're just showing them YouTube videos, right? Like, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I create YouTube videos, right? You create YouTube content. Right. There's nothing wrong with having that. But if you're not willing to invest in your team and you're making them watch, Alex Hormozy videos, you're making them watch inspirational videos, but you're not giving them exactly how to overcome this specific objection, you're leaving money on the table. So I think, so you got to find the right talent, you got to onboard them, you got to train them. That's where I fit in. You got to manage them, and ultimately you got to retain them. And that goes back to purpose, mission, making sure you're inspiring them with the vision that you created for the company.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And, one of the things that we've seen on the investor machine side of our business is, because we started, as maybe a year ago, we would have customers that are sometimes spending over 6 figures a month in lead gen, and like, hey, something happened 2 months ago. It stopped working as well. And when we're listening to their calls, and we're like, well, did somebody new started taking calls, and by the way, they stopped answering the phone live most of the time. So, the reality is I think a lot of times when people talk about sales, they talk about meeting with a seller and, building rapport and kind of the process of meeting with a seller and making an offer, right? But sales is a pipeline that begins where marketing ends. Or there's some overlap there, right? But are you answering the phone live? Are you good at follow-up? Are you over-screening on your appointments? Jason just gave a presentation for my group last week that when they started going after people with just, very low level of motivation, that they doubled their business because they were over-screening, like a lot of real estate investors, a lot of entrepreneurs.
Overqualified.
A lot of people are just lazy. They're just lazy. People are lazy. Like, I don't want to go on that appointment unless it's a really good one. It's like, yeah, but you're missing out on all these things that people didn't tell you the truth on the phone. Do prospects lie on the phone, Steve, ever?
Well, one of my favorite shows was House, right? It was Dr. House on Fox. And he had an expression, which was everybody lies. And so, yeah, 100% prospects lie. But the reality is 100% of the population lies, right? It's just how much do we lie, right? So I might tell you I'm, 6 foot when I'm actually 5'10", right? Or you can have someone that's a complete psychopath. They'll tell you a complete lie that has nothing to do with reality. We all lie to some degree. Prospects, they lie to us. They have to, because they believe that if they tell us the truth, they're going to be in trouble. The old days, right? Like the simple wisdom buying a car, it was you would never have a taxi drop you off at the car dealership, right? The sharks are going to be circling around you, right? You just don't do it.
Cash, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's the same thing here. Like homeowners, when you talk to them, aren't going to tell you, well, Mike, my house is worth 400,000, but if I got 80,000, I'd be pretty good with it. They're not just going to volunteer this information,
right?
And so what we qualify for, what I believe to be true, what we train on is if they tell you that they need to sell, nothing else matters. Now, are we going to ask the questions? Of course, right? But if they say, I want fair market value, don't care. That's just a data point, right? If they need to sell, we're going, because that's the job of the salesperson, right? Homeowners, prospects lie to us. Our job is to uncover the truth. Their job is to say no. Our job is to help them figure out saying yes to us is the best outcome for them, right? If their job wasn't to say no, we wouldn't need salespeople. So we go, I believe, like the people that we worked, that worked here, they know, right? I'm generally a nice person, but I'm a tyrant. If it comes to, if they said they needed to sell, we're going. I don't care what your reasons are, what your excuses are, what the notes in the CRM says. If they said they need to sell, we're going, and you go and earn your commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Steve, I know you got a couple of resources you want to share, guys. We're going to have some notes down in the show notes here. We've got a few links for you, but what other resources do you have to share with these guys?
Oh yeah. So appreciate you asking that. So we have a complimentary script review with Ian Ross on my team. The guy is a complete as an aficionado. The guy's an expert when it comes to sales, right? The guy dives deep, loves talking about people's scripts. So complimentary script review with Ian. We got my book, Active Listening 2.0, the PDF. We got our KPI tracker, some modules that I've recorded at other events to talk about how to be effective at sales, as well as some other bonuses that we're including. So if you if you text the word script to the phone number 33777, script, SCRIPT, to the phone number 33777, you get all that. You get to talk to my team. You get book, all the modules that we recorded as bonuses, things I'm really proud of, that I want to give insane value to anyone that's willing to go through it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, guys, make sure you send in that text and check down below in the show notes for some additional links to learn more about Steve. So Steve, thanks for joining me today. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks for having me. It was really pleasant conversation.
Yep. Everybody, we'll see you on the next show.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.